Dusty, welcome back to the show, man.
Hey, what's going on, man? Good evening. Thanks for having me on. Good to see you,
Yeah,
bud.
yeah, dude. Thank you. I had another guest. He got sick. Asked if we could reschedule, and I love just putting it out there, see if anyone's interested. I was excited when I saw that you responded. I'm like, this could be fun. You're easy to talk to.
Well, I'm real shy on camera. I'm not used to it. I don't really like to talk in front of crowds, so don't embarrass me.
No, but yeah, man, I'm excited to have you on. Last time I saw you was in the Susquehanna.
Man, was that not the best, man? That was. I'll tell you. I'm actually. When you text me, I was actually in the middle of typing my recap for the lacrosse event, and in the recap I touched briefly on the camping trip and kind of what that meant to me and sort of some of the details about it. And it was just a really cool experience, man. I'm glad you joined us up there, and
Yeah, dude, I'm still riding the high off it. I had that's like one of my. That's why, like one of my, when I think about some of the great times I've had in life, that was an awesome time.
Absolutely, man.
And not just the fishing, like hanging out with everyone.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's a whole other element it gets discussed and it gets talked about, but it's a whole another element that's, easy to look over when people sort of get involved with the competitive nature of it and who's doing what or, things like that, or maybe more the selfish natures of the game.
Right.
It's really nice to, form relationships, friendships, and get to experience that stuff with other people.
Yeah, dude, absolutely. Well, I mean, got to figure out what we're going to talk about. I know I said we'll kind of shoot it from the hip or whatever, but we got to talk about lacrosse some because it's on my bucket list. I ended up pulling out of it this year. I'm like, my season's kind of just like not over, but kind of like I've kind of done what I've wanted to do so far this year. Next year, I'm kind of getting ready for the next season instead of I'm thinking about resources and things like that. So I'm kind of like I'm gonna hold off on this one because I think next year is gonna start off great for me. But I made a tough call not to go, but dude, lacrosse is on my bucket list. Every time I look at it, like from a map point, or when you start looking at the maps and things, I'm like, this place just looks awesome. It's got so many different ways you could approach it. You got the river itself, smallmouth, and you got the backwaters with just grass and largies, and I mean you can go from like throwing a frog to maybe drop shotting a ledge or so. I don't know, but it looked like it was just like an incredible place to fish, and I want to talk about it some.
No, you're absolutely right. I think if you can sort of talk about that's and you know what? Traditionally, these are just 3 freaking pools we're fishing,
right?
Which is mainly what I'm experiencing. But even just within those 3 pools, like where we're talking about, where much of the competitions are held, it's vast. I mean, and it's so varied, and there's just really not enough time in your lifetime to learn that all, man. And the thing is. It's funny that you mentioned that because I was talking with Jay Wallen today, and he wrapped it up real succinctly, man. He said, that's a place where it's less of a pattern than it is a spot. So it's a real spot place. So if you find them, they'll probably hit on a variety of things, regardless of some sort of pattern. For me this week, it was sort of a challenge. I had a poor practice. And I didn't really finish where I wanted. I didn't finish where I could have. I'll give you those details probably a little bit later. But getting back to the fishery itself, yeah, it's incredible. It hasn't treated me the best in competition, but I've had some ridiculous practice days there. It's absolutely gorgeous. And we can't forget that it's the Mississippi River, man. It's an American waterway. It's a historic waterway, and it's a really cool place. So I hope that the next time you get an opportunity to make sure you go.
Yeah, it's on the bucket list. Yeah. So, but what was kind of like your approach to it, man? Because I think it's like one of the hardest things I have right now. Because I'm still trying to figure out the whole pre-fishing.
Well,
and kind of like not really forcing myself to fish a certain way, because like kind of letting the I'm not like a hippie or something like that, but like kind of like fishing the moment and kind of letting the conditions tell me how I should fish it. Because a lot of times I go in there with these like strong mindsets. I'm going to throw this, or I'm going to fish the grass, and like half the time it doesn't work like that. Oh, did you disappear? Uh-oh, I think I lost you. All right, I think we lost him. Give us a second. All right, no worries. He just kind of locked up. But yeah. No worries,
man. I'm so sorry about that. It was a slot for advertisement that was brought to you by Catch Products.
Yeah.
And Dakota Lithium batteries, man.
Oh, gotcha. But yeah, like I was saying, like just like not going there like so much, I guess, like so much of a plan at first, but kind of like figuring out what I can do, based off the conditions. You know what I mean?
Well,
like it's.
Well, I was laughing hysterically because you said that, not to sound like a hippie or anything. Like a hippie would say anything like that about pre-fixing conditions, man.
Well, I'm not. I was thinking more like living in the moment, be here in the now.
Well, I know that sounds cliche and it comes off as cheesy. I mean, I say these things in my post. I preach them all the time, but it's just true.
And I know. Sometimes it's just weird when I say it,
Well, not really, man. It's just I mean, that's ultimately what it is. People word it different ways. But I mean, getting back to prefixing strategy, I struggle with that too. There are some practices that go better than others, but really, it wasn't until this year that I really started being more disciplined when it came to a practice approach. Because I mean, for the first 2 or 3 years of competition, and even now, I mean, I'm getting to some lakes that I've never been to, that I've only read about in magazines. I mean, the heck, if you want to diddle around and be conservative, you want to fish, but that's, oftentimes not the best thing to do. Obviously when you're competing. So, you have to sort of find a balanced approach. And I think, what you were alluding to earlier is probably one of the best things. You could read all the things you want. You could do all the homework you want, watch all the YouTube vids you want, look at the maps, digital or paper. I mean, like all types of stuff. And that stuff definitely helps. And that preparation will definitely, put you near the top sometimes. However, things change so much, and all that stuff could be so useless when you get to the damn launch, and when you get on the water, it could be totally different. So sometimes you do have to let those conditions dictate what you want to do. Maybe live in the moment, if that's how you want to describe it, or just kind of get a feel for the fishery, like when you're there, and maybe go from that point. So, I mean, I've been to La Crosse, a handful of times, and once again, I'm a little disappointed with myself, because I feel like I should have covered more water looking for those spots, or even spots within the spots, because this is how you're going to win. I mean, just as a quick example, Drew Gregory, who I think cast a check again, and took out 10, 15 times, 8 times, 10 times. I don't know. I read his post. He's a guy that, will really, sacrifice some fishing time to go from spot to spot. So, I mean, there's a lot of different approaches you can do. What I wanted to do was visit 3 places and sort of go from there. So that's what I did. And I tried to fish those spots thoroughly. I was interrupted with weather a couple times. And the river was really low. So sometimes pedaling around in the Hobie and covering water was a little bit difficult, because you're constantly trying to get weeds off and pedal through real shallow stuff. And it was slow. The fishing was slow. I think I caught maybe a dozen decent keepers in 4 days of practice, and tons of smaller fish. And, didn't really get it on any true pattern. But I ultimately learned enough that, I was able to limit out both days where I was, and do fairly well, come in the top 20, which is, pretty decent for a field of 110. And, practice was tough, but it was also fun. You're seeing different parts of the river, and you're learning different things. There are obviously some landmarks and some things to remember, but the river always changes. It changed while we were there. It changed the week before. And sometimes holes get shallower and holes appear where they were once shallow. And the spots that you had historically aren't the same when you get back there. So, it's always something new with the river. It's always shifting and changing. And, it's up to you to find that spot where you think you could win it.
Yeah. But like going back to like what I was saying earlier, like one of the things that I think I'm a grass angler. I think that I do best in the grass. I really believe that.
Okay.
However, what I'm learning about myself is that's absolutely totally opposite.
Okay.
I mean, there's certain times of the year that, yes, I do good in those certain situations, but I'm finding now that whatever I thought I was, it's completely like turned around. Like now I go to these tournaments, I've had, I guess I've been able to tell myself, when it's not working and when I need to go and do other things. And so now here I am. Never thought it would happen, but now I'm like, I guess a drop shot or Ned rig guy, fishing deep rocks and stuff. It's amazing how I made that transition of like getting away from what I was used to. And it's like when we start doing stuff like that, it all of a sudden clicked to me like how much opportunity I was wasting, trying to fish like comfortable waters and not kind of like you were saying, like covering water and finding those spots and then doing the right thing at those spots, if that makes any sense.
There's a lot of people who succeed on this tournament trail who are big names that might not be as varied and multifaceted as you believe, and really find a lot of success zoning in on one or two or sometimes three things using a very similar bait in a lot of places. So it is amazing that you do that. It's a good thing that you do that because ultimately you want to have some, ability to adapt to different scenarios. And if you want to travel and fish regionally, I think that's obviously a good thing to be able to switch from something you're super comfortable with and that you could do well to something that might not, you might not have a ton of confidence in. And there's only one way to gain confidence in it is by catching some fish on it or finding success in it in some bodies of water you're not familiar with.
But it's also weird when it happens, when it finally clicks. I think it's one of those like weird things where you see like a growth in an angler when they, like I said, like I used to just do the same thing. I would go and I'd find the grass, I'd throw chatterbait, I'd punch. If I was feeling really crazy, I might throw a frog. And just tournament after tournament, it was just like the same results. And then it's like one day I'm like, I'm gonna go fish these rocks at 30 feet and I'm gonna do it with a Ned rig.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, then I figured something out. I found something out, and then I was able to use that throughout the rest of the tournament. And then I'm looking, I'm in the money because I did something different and I did something smart,
Well, I'll tell you what. You mentioned two things: deep rock. Well, you mentioned four things: deep rocks, and then you mentioned drop shot and Ned rig. And this is finesse. This is finesse fishing. Mm-hmm. And for me, growing up, living where I live, it's you almost have to adapt to that because in some of these lakes that I fish in the Michigan area and the Wisconsin area, they're very pressured. They tend to be clear bodies of water. Mm-hmm. A lot of summer angling is historically deep, and with a lot of that pressure, the belief is to scale down in line, use a lot of small plastic finesse applications, just like the drop shot and the Ned rig. So for me, it wasn't almost like, oh man, I better learn this for when I travel. I mean, it kind of is, but for me, it was kind of like, this is just how I got to catch fish around me. But I grew up power fishing. I grew up I could specifically recall, like I grew up with my family like bobbers and minnows, and then my uncle got into lures when I was 8 or 9, and my dad made fun of him for using lures and not live bait, and my uncle was like, no, lures is what the pros use. And then my dad finally, like, the light bulb went off, and he started learning all about that, and he would give me like a lure from time to time, and I started getting subscriptions to the magazines and watching the shows and whatnot, and learning a little bit. But I'd have to I'd have to mow lawns. That's what I did. I mowed lawns. Like I had like a string of customers in the cul-de-sac and like down the block, and I can make like $40 maybe or $30 by mowing 3 or 4 lawns for $10 a piece. And then I'd go to like the bait store and spend like half of it on like 2 spinner baits and like a 2 jigs and like a Uncle Josh pork frogs, and then and like 1 buzz bait or something. And I would use my 10-speed and go to the ponds and power fish. That was my foundation. I didn't even know that was called power fishing, but I would just throw the spinner bait and rip it along the banks and make fan cast and that's all I would do. And sometimes you were successful, but I had no idea what slowing down was or changing presentations. But over time, because of where I lived, that became just a necessity, and you sort of learn that, and you got that in your bag of tricks for when you go to different places. Now I got, I'm not like an ace in everything. I mean, I can kind of do some things, but I have my strengths and weaknesses too.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the weather. Like I saw that the weather like turned up a little bit. It got pretty violent there. It looked like for a few nights, and I'm not sure if the shitty weather like moved into tournament day. It looked like it did.
The issue is that the water was rising, and that could be good and bad. Typically, I don't like that. Typically, you like stable conditions. But the rising water, it did mess up my fish a little bit. The weather was much more it had a lot more precipitation and turbidity than was once projected. I remember AJ posted in the Hobie Bass Open Series the forecast that was projected, and the forecast looked great. And I'm like, oh, great, I'm camping, no doubt about it. I mean, I still camped. But it changed drastically. So it rained a ton. In fact, I was camping, and I think it was Thursday night. I mean, that wind got like 30, 40 miles per hour. It almost blew my tent over. You could probably like see the outline of my body from outside the tent. The wind was blowing so hard. It was like against me. And the reason that tent didn't fly, probably because I was in it. I stayed dry, though. I nailed down that rain fly real good, because I don't know if you remember, but I put my rain fly upside down in Susquehanna, and all that rain poured in. So when my mattress got all wet, I took off my clothes to sleep on them, and my clothes had all that poison ivy and poison oak all over it.
Oh, so no.
I got all messed up, man.
Jesus.
This time was a much drier experience, but I stayed with the Dakota team, in Storm's house for like Monday and Tuesday night, and then I moved to the campsite to sleep Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And my sleep was interrupted because a lot of those nights it rained, and it rained hard, and it was thundering and lightning. And in that valley, in that La Crosse Valley, in that valley in the pools, the river valley, that thunder echoes like extremely loud. So you not only get the thunder, but you get this huge reverberation and just constant noise. It was cool and neat. There's something I really like about that, but a lack of sleep on tourney day or practice days is just no good, huh?
No, not at all. So how much did it change, like what you were planning to do on a tournament? Because that's one thing that being able to adjust, like make those calls that you need to make.
I didn't have a plan because my practice was shite.
Good.
My practice was shite. And I was like, it was like coin flip shit. I mean, stuff. I mean, whatever.
Oh, it's a dog. You can cuss on my show.
Well, I mean, we're in the public sphere here. Let's use a little discretion here. However, let's see. What did I do? Day one, on the first day of practice, I went where I camped, Goose Island, and that's a notoriously famous place. A lot of tournaments won there. Right. It's a maze of channels and chutes whose current depends on what's going on with the river at that time and how high it is. It's famous for little hidden sloughs and cut banks, and it's right up my alley, and I love it. And it's a really neat place to fish. So that's where I went. But the fishing really wasn't good, man, and I struggled big time. I went to a lot of likely looking intersections and points and sand drops and cut banks, and kind of did what I really thought would work, and I really couldn't produce. I couldn't get them on a spinnerbait, a swim jig. I threw a Senko in some of them stuffs, top waters, but it was just not good. And day two, I wanted to do some history in Stoddard, so I went to Stoddard and visited some spots I have there on the main river, hopefully trying to locate some smallies. And that sucked. That sucked bad, and then I got caught in a thunderstorm out there paddling against the current, and with thunder and lightning right over me, and I got drenched, and it sort of like ruined. I had to like dry off, and I spent like an hour or extra to drying my gear and doing all that stuff instead of going to when the storm ended to other water. So that got a little interrupted. The next day I went to where did I go the next day? I went to Pool 9 at a spot close to Genoa, and I looked for smallmouth again. I tried to fish some wing dams, and they were a little tough to fish, but the smallmouth I caught were all 12 and 13 inches. I think I caught one at 14 inches, and I said maybe I could fill a limit here, but it's not a winning spot. So on game day, I decided to fish Goose Island, and definitely stick with a strength, which is fishing topwater, buzz baits, and the whopper plopper. And that really almost got it done. In practice, I oddly found that they would hit a whopper plopper after anything else. The only thing I could really activate them on in the spots I thought they should be in and that they were in sometimes was a dang whopper plopper. And I couldn't buy a frog bite. And, it's notorious frogging, capital of the dang world, seemingly. And other people, got him on a frog pretty good. I swear, I threw 4 or 5 different frogs, Slither K, Scum Frog, some poppers. I threw a lot of different frogs in different colors and sizes. And, I dead stick it. I fish it fast and stuff. And I think I got like 5 or 6 blow-ups in 4 days. So by Sunday, I brought the frog rod because you need to bring it. So there's some spot where you got to try it. But I mean, I basically abandoned it by Sunday.
Well, let me ask you, because like, just with the frog, 'cause that's something that I've been considering a lot lately.
Yeah.
I love throwing frog.
No, I have a love hate with it.
I love it. I love it for free time, for like my personal
Yeah,
time. I mean, it doesn't matter, but
Totally.
I have a hard time like throwing that during a tournament, because I mean, like, are you throwing? I mean, I was talking to Russ Snyder about it one time, but he was talking about throwing into open water. I'm like,
Yeah,
all right.
yeah.
I mean, if the bite's good, the bite's good.
Yeah.
But if the bite's shitty and you're out there throwing a frog and like over mats and whatever lily pads and things like that, it's like there's two things. It's one, it's like you'll sit there for an hour just trying to get a blow up.
Well,
Two, I find that the hookup ratio just isn't that. It doesn't motivate me during a tournament or that kind of risk to whatever ratio you want to call it. Like, it's a very risky thing to me.
I feel the same exact way you do, and I'm very public about being leery of the frogs because I mean, the hookup ratio is just crazy. I mean, some people will be like, oh man, if you really practice and you're patient, you can get that ratio to 70, 80. I'm like, you're out of your mind. 70, 80% ratio. I don't care how good you are, or how many long you've been Dean Rojas or Ishman, I don't care who you are. Dude, it's probably more like 50 or 60%
right
at the best. And yeah, man. But the thing is, with those frogs, they produce 2 or 3 or 5 or 4 or 5 bites. Usually they're big fish.
Yeah.
If that frog bites on, clearly that's some money. And there are some places where, that is the ticket. But for me, like you, that's not, I'd rather, I mean, if it's not a mat or somewhere I can throw another top water, that's what I'll do. And that's what I did.
Yeah, dude. If I can get away with a buzz bait, I'm throwing the buzz bait. Like no matter what. Like, I'm not messing around with the frog. I mean, I throw frogs like if it's a tournament. It's like just when it's so shitty. I'm just gonna throw a frog real quick, see what happens. You know what I mean? It's never something I'm like. I don't know. It's just not something. It's not my first, second, third, fourth, fifth, whatever. It's like
totally
desperation. Like, I got nothing else to lose. Maybe I can get a 5-pounder out of the grass or something.
You're right. And even though open water frogging is completely legit and viable, and like slowly walking frogs and stuff like that is, I mean, sometimes they don't even mimic frogs. I mean, frogs walk like that can mimic bait fish. It's just open water hit. But for me, I tend to be stereotypical with the frog. I'll pull it out when I see a bunch of lily pads and shallow weeds and stuff like that. That's kind of when I frog. Maybe the weeds around a dock, or I'll use it sparingly for a few minutes in the morning. But like you, I'd rather throw a walking bait. That's my favorite top. I'd rather throw a walking bait, like a spook or something like that. Or I've fallen in love over the last couple of years with the whopper plopper, as cliche as it is, or the Chapo, Berkeley Chapo. But and a buzz bait, of course. Those are pretty much what I throw. I mean, I think I even shy away from a popper when I shouldn't.
It's really weird. I don't throw the popper like I used to. Like, it used to be a go-to, but it's like once I figure out how like dominant a whopper plopper is. Well, it's hard for me to like. It's one of those things too. It's a very like I look at the poppers. It's kind of like a really, when you think about it, it seems more finesse compared to like the other ones. If that makes sense.
Absolutely. And when you see a lot of the pros use it, they're usually using the smaller one and making small little plops with them. They're not usually using it. They're not usually working it like vigorously. I really have more confidence in the evergreen shower blow.
Okay.
It's sort of like a walker with a concave popping face, so it like spits and pops, but it has a really good walking action that's real easy to impart. Both sizes too, the medium one and the big one. I forget the numbers. The shower blow. That's actually probably number one all-time favorite topwater bait last 5 years. The whopper plopper last couple of years has just caught so many big smallmouth for me that I use it all the time. And I probably abandoned the buzz bait in favor of the whopper plopper.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, it just depends. Like, if I can get away, like, I like the hookup ratio better with the buzz bait.
What?
I do. I don't know. But no, hear me out though. I know I'm probably wrong on this because
you're probably right. But in my experience, I'm biased.
At Susky though, like the reason I was missing them so much at the Susky on the water ploppers because like everyone told me. I talked to Jake Harshman once. I came back and I cried to Matthew Scotch once, and everyone looked at my hooks and said, "We got to change those hooks." And I'm like, "Oh,
on your plopper."
Oh, my plopper. Or no, my whopper plopper. They said I need to change the hooks on it. I didn't change the hooks because I never really used it before that, like, consistently. But everyone just talked about how violent and fun the whopper plopper bite was at the Susky. So I was like, I'm just gonna get a bunch of whopper ploppers to go out there and get them. And I got a lot of bites, but I had a horrible hookup ratio, which it sucked because it was fun. Yeah, dude. And everyone told me it's because of my hook, and it might have been I might have been using braid in a medium heavy too. So
both hooks or just the back hook?
I ended up abandoning the whopper plopper because I was losing too many fish, and I started doing some other techniques that worked.
I had the opposite experience just now in lacrosse. The buzzbait actually cost me the tournament. I mean, real quick. I mean, not to cry over spilt milk, but on day one, I let a 17-inch smallmouth slip through the drive hole.
And
Jesus! The drive hole was open. I never had the drive hole open, but it was so much BS in there.
Right.
That I popped it. And see here. Here's the domino. Here's what really happened. The domino effect. I've talked about this before in some of my videos. That nobody watches, but the domino effect of a bad cast. Mm-hmm. It's often not just a little frustration or a snag you got to go get. I don't know how many times a bad cast, especially in like wind or current, has dominoed into a scene of insane proportions where you break stuff, lose stuff, and it's not even the snag. It turns into some crazy positioning and wind or some stuff happened. I mean, I almost died because of that.
Right.
Early in the year when my swim jig got caught in the dang thing because I was goofing around.
Yeah.
And that cost me a trauma and thousands of dollars and like crazy shit. This one, I made it was the wind, but I mean, you're supposed to be in charge of it. The wind was blowing and it blew I'm trying to get parallel to the bank and it blew just into the grass enough to get snagged. So I go in there and I get weeds all over my drive and I pop it up, but I happen to be stuck in the bank, just sitting really nice for another parallel cast. This was at 2:30 on Saturday. I had my limit, but I had like a 13-inch fish, a 13.75, a small one. And I caught this 17-inch. I think it was 17.25, but I was never able to see it with its tail down. I think it was.
Right.
And when I made the cast with the drive up, that smallmouth hit it when it was tangled in a bunch of eelgrass. It got tangled. And I was really nailed it and got hooked, and I got him in the net. I'm like, yes. It was like a 4-inch upgrade or 3 and 7. And then on Sunday, I lost an 18-inch fish on the dang buzzbait, and I was so pissed that I threw the buzzbait in. Because I saw him blow up on shad, and I picked up the buzzbait. It was a small 1/8 ounce Booyah buzzbait so I guess it just has a little bit of a smaller hook. And I knew I should have thrown the plopper in there because he absolutely inhaled that buzzbait and just didn't get hooked good. And he didn't even jump off. He got in there. I reeled him to net. He just pulled off right at the end of the net on Sunday, and I was just devastated, man. I stopped fishing for a minute or two and just. Actually, I called Maria and was like, dude, you won't believe what happened, and just like made a tantrum for like 30 seconds and hung up and then continued fishing. But that's 8.5 inches that I lost. And that's third or fourth place versus 18. And that's just been happening to me a lot. And I'm sorry to. No,
it's good. I told you be shooting from the hip. So
yeah, to get on that. But oh gosh, I guess we're tying that into hookup ratios and top waters, and I don't know. I do have some crazy misses on whopper ploppers too. At Lake Ouachita, FLW, man. I needed one keeper to win $12,000, and I had 2 giant blow-ups on the whopper plopper, and they completely missed. So I guess there you go.
Well, I mean that's how I do the Susky. Like I watched 18, and look, to me, this year was a success at the Hobie Vic. It's my first time actually approaching that. So I got like 30th at Champlain, like 40th at the Susky. I'm like, okay, that tells me that I'm getting better. Yeah. But the thing is though, like I can't remember how many inches I finished with at the Susky, but dude, the fish that I lost.
Yeah.
Oh my God. You know what I mean? It's like it's hard. It's hard to get over it.
You're talking to. I mean, that epitomizes me. It's difficult. I can concentrate. I can fish. I can continue to be successful, but I'm still thinking about it.
Well, you get desperate, right? You get a little desperate this time.
Yeah, I'm still fishing, but I'm like, yeah, I'm still thinking about it, and maybe it is subtly affecting what I do. Maybe it's making me cast faster, or maybe I'm not thinking of something when I could be thinking of other things. You never know. The best thing is to let it go and move forward. That's for sure. Yeah. But it's so hard for me to do. It's happening at such frequency, not because I'm poor in like some sort of netting or it's just luck. They're just kind of like pulling off or not getting it fully hooked at these crazy times that are like preventing me from getting into the spots where I really am trying to get to.
Well, I'll tell you what, like a lot of it, I don't know if I did anything wrong, but I know like when I was at the Susky, it happened on both. It took me like 3 hours to figure out each day what I was doing wrong. Like every day I went out there to fish, I learned something new.
Yeah.
And, but it was all from losing really good fish.
Okay.
And like, you know, for day one at the Susky, it was, I didn't have my drag set up right. I was using very light line.
That's something totally different.
Yeah. So I fixed that day.
Yeah.
I got my limit on day one, and I'm like, dude, I lost like 2 or 3, 16 to 18 inches, which would have put me in a good spot. Especially with the limit. I had a decent limit. But then it's like, so I fixed that. Like I went for like 8 or 10 pound tests, and then I fixed my drag, and then the next day it was my hooks. My hooks were not
8 to 10 pound tests on a whopper plopper.
No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I was going Ned rig on game day. The days before is when I learned my lessons on the water. So I went strictly to something else. Like the water flopper just was not going to work for me. I'm talking about just losing fish in general.
Yeah.
And then like the second day it was my hooks that weren't right. My hooks were the small amount. I watched them. I would get them. I would see them. Like that's big. And then the hooks break. Or
wow.
It was just like every day I was learning like just new rules that I got to like think about and then basically I think that had to do with like the body of water we were fishing. I've never fished a river. I've never caught a smallmouth out of a river like that. So there's a lot of things that I had to learn the hard way. But every time you lose a fish, it's just like I can't have that. I can't afford to have that happen again.
Yeah. Sometimes you can. I mean, if the bites fire and they're there and you're going to get them, it's a much more calming thing. But man, that stuff is just not guaranteed. Let me tell you this story, man. On Sunday at La Crosse, I had 2 fish at 232. And based on the last day and a half, there's no way you're going to get 3 fish of any quality in that amount of time, no matter what. I mean, that's just not how it was playing out. My fish weren't coming like that. Well, for me at least, they weren't coming like that. I had to cover water, and I'd be getting maybe 1 or 2. I'd be getting like 8 or 9 7 or 8 quality bites all day, and then some dinks. So these bites were at a premium, and you had to get them at 232 because, to be honest with you, I was devastated, man. I had to. You can never quit, but I was devastated, and I remember running into Joe McElroy. I was just randomly fishing a cut that had a little bend, and I hear some music around the corner. I'm thinking it's a boater or something like that.
Right.
And the music becomes a little clearer. It's Stevie Nicks, Fleetwood Mac. I'm like, oh, hell yeah. And it's Joe McElroy, just, slinging a buzzbait or whatever, on a shoreline. And we had met at the ramp and had a few words, and we just had a really good moment, some bonding moments. We both had 1 or 2 fish. It was a real slow day. He's got a really great attitude on the water. It's a guy you could really learn a lot from, man. And we just had a little bonding moment, man. It was just a couple minutes where we really talked about some stuff that had not a lot to do with fishing and more to do with perspective and maturity and and dealing with things. And it was a really, really good. It was like the perfect person to meet at that perfect time of my frustration. And it was really cool stuff. I'll spare you the details, but on my way. I get out of there. I pass him up like 5 minutes later. I'm on my way back to the ramp. I'm going to fish my way back to the ramp. And I see a little cut that I had seen before, but I didn't remember this big giant log that looked like it was the end of it. And I was like, what? I mean, wait a minute. Let me go check this spot out. So what I thought was just a little cut, that people had thrown a million frogs in. That had a log border in it. I went in there, and it turns out there was like you really couldn't see unless you got in there. It turns out there was like 6 inches of a clear spot going like this around the log with duckweed behind it, but you can tell there was flow, and flow is huge when you're like dissecting rivers and like kind of looking at spots like in the Mississippi River where you're fishing cuts and shoots like the Goose Island area. There are some sloughs and hidden areas that are more still than others. And areas with a lot of current and flow will be the ones that you probably want to target, because this is, going to be more oxygen, more bait fish, more stuff's going to flow through there. And this is where the bass are going to position. So this 6 inches of water was actually enough for me to put the Hobie. I put the Hobie over the log, and then I got one foot out and tried to push it, and I got the other foot out and sank it in the mud to get it over finally. And then I got it over and put my drive back in and just furiously pedaled to a clearing I saw back there. It's like 237 now. And I didn't even get past the weeds. I just sat and stuck in the weeds where I can make a cast with 5 feet of weed in front of me. And I casted this juicy looking hole, bam, 15 inch. I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. I got him. And I measured him. I'm like, all right, that's 3 fish. Man, what if there's some more in here? Next cast. 1650 on the whopper plopper, same angle, same exact cast to the same spot. I'm like, holy cow, it's 240. This is now doable. This is the kind of miracle stuff that, once it happens once in a while. And 2 casts later, in the middle of some duckweed, bam, man, another 16-inch fish. So in 5 or 6 casts, I caught 3 nice bass to fill up my limit. And really, it was at that point that I realized exactly how costly that smallmouth that slipped through the hole and the one I had missed about 8 a.m. on the buzzbait was. These are the difference between really big check and a lot of points and some good feelings and not a finish that's not so much what you wanted.
Right. But I mean it's absolutely right. I mean when that last tournament that I won, first place, it was the same thing. The whole day sucked for me. I caught 3 fish. I had 2 hours left, and I had 3 bites and 3 fish. That was it. And so I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do, because I wanted to go home all day. It was just a horrible day, a horrible pre-fish. I'm just I can be home in 5 hours. I can cook some steaks and hang out with the family and just be done with this. But I'm like, whatever. We'll just go try this one last spot. It's got everything that it would make it a good spot, and the spots that were fishing weren't working. So I'm like, all right, I'm gonna go try this. I got 2 hours left. It's going to take me at least an hour to get back to the ramp. So screw it. So I went, and then first cast, I get a 17.5-inch fish. And I'm like, okay, I got 4 fish. Now I'm looking at my points. I'm like, damn, dude, if you get a 12.5-inch fish, you're going to finish in the top 10, or something like that. Which is that's why I stayed there for a little bit, and literally 2 minutes before they shut down the leaders board, I catch a 19.5. And so I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, I just won this thing. Just won it. I was like, dude, I just got. It took me a while to figure out that I won it, because I wasn't counting on a fish being that big. I was struggling all day. I thought, I go here, I'll probably catch it was a really nice rocky area. I was like, I'll probably catch a 12, 15-inch smallmouth, because that was the story of the day for everyone. Everyone caught a lot of fish, but they're all small fish. So I'm just like, this is probably about as good as I'm gonna get for me. Then when I caught that 19.5, I'm like, dude, if I would have quit, went home, I would have came in 80th place or something like that.
Well, listen,
the 2 casts, I'm first.
We travel so far from these places, and sometimes the reality of it is that you didn't do well, and there isn't a lot of hope for you to catch a check, and people have 10 and 15 and 17-hour drive, 22-hour drive home and stuff like that. I don't blame anybody for getting an early start on that, getting back to their family and feeling better. I mean, that's real, and I don't blame anybody. But I think ultimately it's better to not quit. I mean, if it's practical for you, it's better to gut it out. It's better to finish it off, not only because it'll just make you feel a little better, regardless of the results, but because of your situation, because of the situation I just talked about. You just never know. And it's not like it's your and my stories are the highlights. We always hear this. We always hear about last minute miracles or what happened because someone didn't quit. So
yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah,
but the thing is, I get it from a 2-day tournament. If you completely ruin it on the first day, I might not fish the second day.
You can't win it, but you can lose it.
Yeah, but I mean, still at the same time, it changed my perspective a little bit. It's just you're never really especially if it's a 1 day or if you made the day 2, you're not really out of it. You know what I mean? There's always a chance, whether it's to cash the big check, cash one of the smaller checks, or just get some really good points. There's still a victory that can be won here.
Absolutely. I didn't even do any math. I didn't even look at it. I didn't try to figure anything out because I don't know, for some weird reason, I'm just not that kind of person. But RJ Hoover messaged me, Duke they're like, I think you squeaked into the TOC somehow. And I'm like, I don't think my finishes to me are undeserving of some tournament of champions. I did do well at Susky, I suppose, in a big field. But I mean, I don't know. I was fairly disappointed in my performances this year. Fairly, not all. There was many things I was proud of. Some things that had nothing to do with on the water stuff, and some things that did. And I think that these last couple events are putting me back into just becoming a little more consistent. Mentally, I'm in a much better place than I have been in the past year and a half. I mean, what it takes at these tournaments is experience.
Yes.
And I'm getting that, and I'm learning how to deal with the emotional ups and downs and the swings. I mean, I'm a volatile person in general, whether I was fishing or not, and not volatile in a bad way or a violent way, but I'm an emotional guy, and these swings that you get in competition can be, huge, from a debilitating miss on a topwater that is a difference between going home with $3,000 or $4,000 or nothing,
right?
And then filling out a limit in 5 casts that you weren't anticipating, for 3 bass, things of that nature. So
right.
You have to, there's a certain approach that's good. You got to kind of
be able to. Well, one more thing, and then we'll wrap this thing up, man. So going back to because you've been doing it for a while. There's something when I first, one of the reasons I avoided Hobie, probably last year and the year before that was just a lot of money, not feeling like I'm really ready to go out there and compete at that level. And I kind of want to bite myself in the ass or kick myself in the ass for it, because it's now that I've done these tournaments and I've seen what I'm capable of. It's dude, imagine if if this would have been your second year at the Susky. Imagine if this would have been your second, and this is something that I'm thinking. It's dude, if you're, and especially for someone who's new to this, because a lot of people, I got a lot of new anglers that talk to me, and they always say the same thing. I want to get a little bit better before I fish the Hobie. But I'm like, dude, you're never going to be ready to fish the Hobie until you've done it. Until you've done it 3 or 4 times. When you look at
exactly,
I'm starting to understand why Russ Snyder and all the other guys are so good. It's because they got so much time on those lakes, because at one point it was their first time fishing it, and then now it's
well, I think when you mention people like Russ Snyder's or people of that ilk, people who we consistently see at the top, yes, a lot of that can be chalked up to experience, but they are absolutely good anglers.
Yeah,
they
absolutely
great anglers. Who, I mean, I can I'm spending time with them. I can see that. I can hear it. I can see it. I can pick their minds. We have dialogue and discussion, and I can see the nuances and the experiences that make them, very good anglers. So yeah, it's a combination. I mean, it's experience on top of skill. That's hard to beat.
Yeah. And then just being comfortable with it, or knowing something. Every time you go there, you learn something a little bit more, and it becomes more.
Yes.
I mean, you're talking about 2 seasons or two different separate events where you've covered water, where you've eliminated water, and you learn how to catch fish on whether it be the river or whatever. But it's
totally.
It's just one of those things. I think you have to go and you have to pay. And when I say pay dues, I mean literally dues. You're gonna have to pay $260 a few times before you can really.
My dues have nothing to do with finances.
Yeah,
my dues aren't that any dollar I've spent on an entry fee or piece of gear or anything like that. My dues are wisdom, maturity, learning how to be a professional, to have a good attitude, to overcome obstacles. And I'm still learning. There's nothing perfect. I mean, I think that's that's sort of the dues that you have to pay, the losing and the 15-hour ride homes and the
bad weather
and the grinding and the organization and the hyper vigilance and all of that stuff. That's all part of the game. Mm-hmm. Anybody can win on any given weekend in any different kayak in any event. We all know that. But the reason that you see these names at the top more than not is because of that experience and that grind and going through that and learning that.
Yeah. All right, cool, man. Like I said, we'll wrap this thing up. Yeah. What's next for you? What's your season looking like now? It's almost over. We got
I think if in fact I did get into the TLC this weekend somehow, I mean, I would like to visit Lake Eufaula and try to attend that. What's immediately next for me is actually a wonderful Catch Outdoors trip. We're gonna be rolling with Lance McWhorter, and we're gonna be up in the Colorado area in some real remote stuff, fishing for trout and doing catch and cooks with his culinary skills up there, and we're really looking forward to it. It's going to be a phenomenal thing. I've never got a chance to fish in that part of the country, so another bucket list thing that I can sort of knock off the list. I would also really like to attend the KBF National Championship because last time in Caddo Lake I came in 10th. And I had a marvelous time off the water with a lot of good eating and camaraderie with friends. So that was a really good experience for me. So I'd like to visit that area again. And I'm pretty much thinking that outside of some catch stuff, that's probably gonna wrap up the competitive end of the season. I'd like to get to the UP for some fall smallmouth fishing, and I think that's kind of gonna be how
wrapping it up, huh?
Yeah.
Dude, the year went by fast.
It went by very fast. I would have to agree. Last year seemed to go by a little slow. This year seemed to go by very fast.
Yeah. All right, man. Anyone you want to think that makes fishing easier for you before we close this thing out?
Yeah, absolutely. First, my headline sponsor, Catch Outdoors and Catch Products USA. I can't say enough about them. And they offer me true support, and they got my back through thick and thin. Dakota Lithium, these excursions, these camping trips, crossing the country. I can't imagine doing that without the security of those lithium batteries and the portability and the lightweightness. They literally power me through all that stuff. My apparel company, Real Sportswear, out in Texas, keeping me protected through all types of weather, and of course Hobie Fishing for the best platform.
Cool. All right, man. Well, I really do appreciate you stepping in and it was a fun conversation. I'm not sure exactly what it was all about. It was all over the place. I like that, but I appreciate it, man. And it was hope to see you again soon, man. I had a great time with you guys on the Susky. I'm a little upset now that I missed the lacrosse, but
yeah,
we'll do it again sometime.
Absolutely, man. I look forward to seeing you soon, and stay in touch.
All right, buddy. I'll talk to you later.
All right, brother.